Hello everyone. Thank you for coming out. Welcome to our Rest in Power event, Remembrance event. My name is Brandy Douglas. I'm the Assistant Director of Outreach in the Office of Institutional Diversity, and with me, Dr. Kevin Dougherty and Dr. Damani Wright, we want to welcome you to this Remembrance event. This event is part of a short series of events called Rest in Power, a reflection on Black lives and liberation. Kevin, Damani, and myself want to create a space for members of our Black community to share what's on their hearts. The deaths of so many Black folks by the hands of police has taken a toll on this community who live to mourn. We may not be related, but there's still pain in our hearts that lingers. From Elijah McClain to Ayanna Stanley Jones, from Dante Wright to Oscar Grant, from Sandra Bland to Tamir Rice, from Ahmad Dalio to Makia Bryant, the list of names and lives that have ended at the hands of police stretched decades with no end in sight. And so we wanted to create this space for us to talk it through. This format will be as follows. Kevin and I are going to introduce each of these speakers, and the speakers will have their moments to share their thoughts and reflection. And then after each speaker, there will be a moment of reflection for the audience. And for those who are here in person, you're going to hear music during that reflection time. And for those who are joining us in the live stream, it'll be moments of silence, but we do have some musical suggestions if you'd like to take us up on it. And we'll just be in community together and in rumination together. And I thank you all for coming out, and I'd like Kevin to come and start us with introduce our first speaker.
Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to be here for this momentous occasion. I have the honor and the privilege of introducing Dr. Charlene Alexander. So Dr. Alexander is the Vice President and Chief Diversity Officer at Oregon State University. Dr. Alexander came to OSU from Ball State University, where she served as the Associate Provost for Diversity and Interim Associate Vice President for Community Engagement since 2013. Under her leadership at Oregon State University, she developed its first diversity strategic plan that affirms the university's dedication to diversity and inclusion and to ensuring that diversity is an integral part of the Oregon State University identity. Her efforts led OSU to receive the Higher Education Excellence in Diversity Award in 2018, 2019, and 2020. Dr. Alexander received her undergraduate degree in psychology from Creighton University, earned her master's in counseling and guidance from Creighton University, and completed her doctorate in counseling psychology from the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Alexander.
Thank you, Kevin. It's so good to be with you today and to celebrate and think about what it means for folks who are Black to live in the United States. Brandy asked me to speak from the heart, so I'm not going to. Not as yet, anyway, because I have to look at what I've written. So, but when I think about Rest in Power, I think about the life and the legacy of John Lewis. And when John Lewis died on July 17, 2020, I said the following. As a college student, Representative John Lewis was a founder of the Student Nonviolent Coalition Committee and its first president. Additionally, he was one of the Freedom Riders. Representative John Lewis organized the March on Washington and delivered a stirring address to the nation on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. In 1965, he led the march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, a day that is forever remembered as Bloody Sunday. Representative Lewis was severely beaten that day by Alabama State Police. The beatings he endured never dampened his pursuit for civil rights and voting rights. Representative John Lewis introduced many pieces of legislation in Congress, legislation designed to support the poor, create jobs, gun control, and universal health care. His legislation enabled the creation of the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington. This bill was first introduced in 1988 and failed many times before President George Bush signed the bill in 2003. Sadly, many of us have forgotten what these men had to endure to secure our civil and voting rights. They suffered beatings that I would argue continues in a different form today for Black and brown folks. We can only imagine today, as our collective voices continue to denounce efforts to deny the rights of others to vote and the Black Lives Matter movement across the country. Final words from his address on Washington. He said, "We will march through the South, through the streets of Jackson, through the streets of Danville, through the streets of Cambridge, through the streets of Birmingham. But we will march with the spirit of love and the spirit of dignity that we have shown here today. By the force of our demands, our determination, and our numbers, we shall splinter the segregated South into 1,000 pieces and put them together in the image of God and democracy. We must say, wake up, America, wake up, for we cannot stop, and we will not and cannot be patient." That's what he said then. And I guess if I were to speak from the heart, and as I think about the piece of music that Brandy wanted to inspire us with, that follows this piece, that piece of music is "I Can't Breathe." And there were a couple lines from that piece that really spoke to me. And one of the lines was, "What gets in the way of seeing me as your equal? What gets in the way of you seeing me as your equal? Is the human spirit truly so fragile that we must constantly work to prove our superiority?" It's a question that I have. It's a question that I have. And I think what gets in the way is ignorance. Ignorance of the facts that the differences in our genetic makeup and the influences of our skin color are essentially meaningless. Yet we continue to attribute such significance to those differences. I feel that everything that could be said has already been said. I still continue to have no words. What can I say that will convince you that we are all equal? But what I can ask for is for you to think about what it is you can do. What are the actions that you can take? And for our faculty, and some folks have heard me say this before, when a student walks into your classroom, they know immediately whether, and this is especially true for students of color, when they walk into your classroom, they know immediately whether you think they belong there or not, because they have had a lifetime of sniffing that out, and they can pick it out right away. So to our faculty, I say, what I want you to do is to recognize every student that walks into your class as someone who intends to be successful, that you know will be successful. I want you to treat them as you would your own child if your child was walking into the class. What would it be if you were able to say to all of your students, the goal is for every single one of you to be successful in this class? To not act in a way that you are, in fact, the gatekeeper for the profession, keeping out those you think should not be there. But act in a way that says, we welcome you. Our goal is to continue to support you. Our goal is to continue to welcome you to the university. I've said before to our first-year students, our freshman students, we pick you. Some didn't like that. I don't care. But we picked you. We picked you to be here. And the fact that we picked you says we are committed to your success here at this university. And that means that we do have to think differently and act differently. The bottom line for me is, first of all, respect. And if we can all agree that our goal, our pure sense of who we are is to respect each other, and we act in that way, then I believe we will continue to live out the promises of John Lewis and what he envisioned and worked for our country. Thank you.
Christopher Hubanks works in the residential education unit of University Housing and Dining Services. As a trained social justice facilitator and diversity educator, Chris has developed workshops on recruiting and training diverse teams, cross-cultural working relationships, developing social justice competencies, and dialogue across difference in the workplace. In addition to teaching courses that build social justice knowledge, most recently in the College Student Services Administration's master program here at Oregon State University. Christopher is a first-generation college student from Detroit, Michigan, and received a Bachelor's of Arts in Psychology from the University of Michigan and a master's degree in social justice education from the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Chris is currently a PhD candidate on campus in the Language Equity and Educational Policies program, researching university discourses aimed towards creating more gender-inclusive campus environments. Chris is the first vice president of the local Corvallis Albany NAACP and uses the pronouns queen. Let's welcome Queen Chris.
I felt very official when you wiped off that mic. I've only seen that on TV in Washington. So I'm excited to be able to experience that. Okay. Well, what do you say at a Rest in Power event where everyone in attendance already has witnessed the murder of Black people? What other information do you need to know? As with any person grieving, relationships and connections are important. And if you don't have a relationship with a Black person, you're not entitled to their grief. Grief is a healing process. It does not fit into a capitalist logic. It takes time and requires space and processing. I hope my people, Black people, on this campus are closely connected to people that they know, love, and cherish. That is what we need at this time. We need to do what works for us. And it matters that we are here and that we exist and that we're alive and living. I'm not motivated by racism. It isn't about me. It was never about me or any other African stolen from their land, their family, friends, their community, languages, spiritualities, ways of knowing, realities, homelands. As Black people, we are not strong because of racism, and the speakers that you get to hear today are not stronger because they decided to share their thinking with you. We are already strong. We've always been that way. We've always been brilliant. We've always been royalty. We've always been human. This is why you get to hear my voice today, our voices today. And we grieve because these racist, white supremacist strategies, rooted in greed, continue to take the lives of those we care about and those we never got to meet and fall in love with. We grieve because that's what humans do. And we grieve because we are not victims. And we will let nothing get in the way of our full liberation and the bold lives we came to this campus to live. These strategies will continue to happen as long as we allow them to. Voter suppression, denying someone tenure, police violence, crossing the street because you're scared, whatever thought you have, thinking of somebody else when you hear Black Lives Matter, wondering about other groups or something like that. These strategies that take us away from centering what happens to Black people will continue to happen as long as we allow them to. And I'm not here to teach you or educate you on what you need to do. I'm also not here to inspire you. I'm actually not here for you. I'm here because I'm grieving, and I got asked to come and share my thoughts. My heart is broken. Micaiah Bryant could have been one of my students. She could have gotten admitted to this campus, and I will never get to know her or learn from her. I won't get to advise her, back her leadership, laugh with her, listen to why she chose to come to this campus, tell her where she can get some hair products, help motivate her when it gets tough, when she's the only one in her class or the only one in her residence hall. Have her come to a social justice retreat. I won't get to do any of those things with Micaiah Bryant, should she have decided to come to this campus, which none of us will ever know. And we need to grieve that, and I will continue to grieve that. There's plenty to do. You saw the banner on Kerr, and you have the information and the context clues and the evidence to get started. So what will that be for you? My mother, a Black Southern woman, and now an ancestor, she made sure that when I left the house, that she knew that I knew that I was a reflection of her, and what I did was connected to that. You're not just walking into this world just anywhere. You're walking as a reflection of me. And so to folks who are not Black, how long will you allow racism? This type of racism, police violence that targets Black people, how long will you allow it to disrespect your name and your people, to compromise your humanity? You get to ask yourself that as you think about what it makes sense for you to do. Oregon State University was built with the master's tools. It doesn't need to be better, it needs to be rethought. And we have the brilliant minds to do that. To white folks, in lieu of flowers or some donation or gift, I ask that you gather to those closest to you who need to hear your voice, who you can influence and who you can impact. What can you get invested in? What humanity do you need to reclaim for yourself and your people? Each life lost to racism has taken a piece of our humanity, and we need to grieve that. A revolution isn't always a march or a protest or some glamorized collective of people in the media that you might have seen. A revolution can be a new relationship. It can be a reclaiming of one's souls, changing someone's mind, a bold act against injustice, a reallocation of resources, a resignation. A revolution is any act towards justice and liberation for you and us. Black lives matter. Black is beautiful and Black is love. And as Black people, we get to keep on living and loving and celebrating and twirling and marching and dancing and going to class and learning and working and teaching and graduating and persisting. Thank you, Dan. We get to keep on taking care of ourselves and doing whatever else works for us. And if we do anything else, and we will, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christopher. Our next speaker is Dorian Smith. Dorian is the director of the Dr. Lawrence Griggs Office of Black and Indigenous Success within the Educational Opportunities Program Office at Oregon State University. In this role, Dorian helps students navigate college life and connect them to learning experiences outside of the classroom. In his spare time, he enjoys spending time with his wife, Sarah, and daughter, Savannah. Please welcome Dorian to the stage.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for just being here and being in the space with us. When I was thinking of what to say, I was struggling, and they said, speak from your heart. And I don't know if they were sure who they were asking to speak from their heart, but I said, all right, you'll get what you asked for. So a man was lynched, a woman was shot, another black life taken by the cops. How fast can my heart beat during this routine traffic stop? Good Lord, when will it stop? I am a humongous black man. And that means every day, every second, every conversation, like countless others, I think, how's my voice sounding? What clothes am I wearing in this situation, and how am I showing up? How many police are here? I have to learn headlights, so when I drive at night, I know when to speed up, slow down, how long has that car been following me? Should I pull into a lit area? How far is that lit area away from me? At 13, I was taught how to be pulled over because my uncle said, you're 6'1", and they won't beat your ass, they'll shoot you. We thought it was a joke, but it was so true. So as we stand here and we look to remember the lives, the countless lives of black Americans that have been stolen from us for hundreds of years, but specifically within these last couple of years that opened the eyes to this country and finally made people listen to what we've been saying for decades. We can't breathe. We can't walk. We can't dance. We can't be loud without a foot on our neck or a bullet in our back. And now, as a father of a beautiful 5-year-old, I think, how long until I have to tell her what my uncle told me? How long until she has to experience racism? And I actually have the answer for you. And it almost caused me to move and leave this place. And I'll never forget the day because it was my birthday. My daughter was 4 years old on my birthday in our front yard when somebody rolled by on their bike and said, burn that nigger baby alive. She had no clue what that meant, but she knew what it sounded like, and it wasn't nice. 4 years old. And as a black male, I had to think, what would happen if I chased this person down, right? I don't want to be the same kind of position that countless parents have been, of mourning their children for getting Skittles and walking home, for sleeping in their bed, for a routine traffic stop, or for just being. I just want to be free to be me. I don't want my skin to dictate your fear. I don't want my skin to dictate your fashion. I don't want my skin to dictate what music you think is cool. I just want to be me and want my daughter to feel free to be her. As I sit here and I reflect and I think about those countless lives that are lost due to police violence, due to racism, to white supremacy in this country, I think about where do we go from here and what do we do next? How can we be impactful? How can we cause that number to stop? And I think about these conversations that we're having about education. And I don't know about y'all, but a lot of black history I learned in college. And a lot of people didn't learn history at all. But I think if my daughter at 4 can learn what racism is, I think we should too. And her classmates should too. And her friends should too. I think as we reflect on what it means for people to rest in power, is to know that their lives weren't lost for nothing. And as we read out the names of the countless black folks that we've lost, I want every one of them to know, as they lay in the ground, their seeds. There's so many that are coming after them that are going to continue to fight for what's right. So we can be. 'Cause that's all we want to do. It's just be. We want to have the power to be free. I'm not looking at the clock, so feel free to come up here and, do your best, get your broom, sweep me off whenever the time comes. But I want to recite one of my favorite poems. And what I love about it is that it gives us the opportunity to think about us being in control of our future. And so many of us have lost their lives and their futures just for being black and nothing else. And I want my brothers and sisters who we lost to know that they should rest in power, because coming after them are people that are going to fight so this injustice stops. Out of the night that covers me, black as a pit from pole to pole, I think whatever God's may be for my unconquerable soul, in the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeoning of chance, my head is bloody but unbound. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishment the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. Everyone, to my black brothers and sisters, to my friends, my allies, to everyone that's here, I just don't want you to say, right, or wear Black Minds Matter. I want you to know that. I want you to feel that in your soul and think about, what does that mean? And if this causes you pause to say all lives, take a minute and reflect on yourself. Do you go to other people's birthday party and tell them when your birthday is? When your kids cry, do you say, I've been sad too? If your spouse is thirsty, do you talk about that one time in 3rd grade when you wished you had something to drink? Probably not. When people are crying out for help, it's our duty to help. It's our duty as human beings to support each other. And if someone is crying out saying, I just want to be free to be me, don't call the cops. Don't ask why those black kids are speaking so loud. Don't say, turn your music down. And don't say, well, they say that in the song, so I can say it too. Give us the chance to be us. Give us the chance to have our power now, so we don't have to rest in it. Give us the chance to thrive and not just struggle to survive. To my students, to my leaders who are going to be entrepreneurs and builders, make sure your dollar isn't my 71 cents. And if I'm a black woman, less than that. Give us a chance to just be us. And I pray that we all can take a moment of silence and reflect on how we can let those countless black bodies rest in power. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorian, for those words. So many things that I took away from what you shared. One being the most obvious for me and for my fellow Divine Nine members of that Invictus poem. Thank you for that. The other part where you express, let us be free to be us. And what I took from that, for us to be free, not how others may want us to be or how others may think for us to be, but for us to be. So I really appreciate your words. I have the privilege of introducing our next speaker. Our next speaker, Dr. Anna Spaulding, is an assistant professor of marine and coastal policy at Oregon State University and research associate at the Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute and Cobra Research Station in Panama. She has a doctorate in environmental studies from the University of California, Santa Cruz, a master's in marine affairs and policy from the University of Miami, and a bachelor's in international economics from the University of Richmond. She has published widely on the socio-environmental outcomes of lifestyle migration to Panama, on the linkages between land use and policy, property rights, and development, and more broadly on the evolution of marine policy and conservation in Panama and the United States. She is also fascinated by the interdisciplinary and collaboration as an academic endeavor where it no longer represents an abstract concept, but instead has become a critical framework for addressing global environmental threats. Her current research includes the study of adaptive capacity to ocean acidification in resource-dependent communities in California and science policy engagement related to ocean acidification on the West Coast of the United States. On an international scale, she is interested in exploring the current state of future of Anthropocene ocean governance, particularly as it relates to marine protected areas, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the blue economy, and the role of the ocean in achieving climate and societal goals. Dr. Spaulding is also the chair of the Membership and Nominations Committee of the OSU President's Commission on the Status of Black Faculty and Staff Affairs. Please welcome Dr. Spaulding.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Kevin, for the introduction, and thanks everyone for being here, and Brandy, Damani, and Kevin for the invitation to speak today. So I think you've all heard already. We were our marching orders were speak from the heart, and I'd say this is lucky because when it comes to issues of race and injustice, speaking from the heart is all that I can do. It's speaking from my personal experience. Is all that I can do. It's been great to see over the past year how it's been filled with anti-racist efforts, the emergence of true allyship, diversity committees, trainings, and efforts to support recruitment and retention of faculty, staff, and students. However, what comes to mind when I hear all of that is all that you are learning is about me. It's about me and my community and who we are. So something that has become a process, a training, a workshop, it really feels like it's about me and about my community. And so while people around the world are reading books, participating in committees, supporting Black-owned businesses, while they are engaging in all the actions we talk about in terms of anti-racism, some are performative, not all. We as a community continue to be who we are. And I must say that nothing much has changed for me and for us, for our community, except that perhaps now our pain, our losses, our celebration, and our joys are on display. And oftentimes, I also have to then explain that. And I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I don't want to be in the spotlight. I'd rather not have to be reminded constantly about the injustices, not only what I feel, but then also being asked how I feel. I would rather not have to wonder if I was chosen to participate in an event because of the color of my skin, if I got a certain award because of what I look like. And so don't get me wrong, as the daughter of an environmentalist, nature lover, a woman who has always been committed to a life of change, I do believe that these actions can achieve that change. That said, I still don't want to stand up. I don't want to be seen just because of what I look like. Because let me tell you, I particularly don't want to be reminded of the pain, because the pain comes out of nowhere. That pain is often really deep. It's generations of pain, of separation. And our bodies remember. After the killing of George Floyd, I was angry. I was so angry. The world was angry, but I told everyone I was angry. But deep down inside, when I thought about it, and it was months later that this visceral feeling hit me, I was terrified. I was terrified because the image of my dad, a younger version of my dad, came to mind, and I couldn't shake that image. Why would anybody want to kill my dad, or my uncle, or my cousin? So while this was all happening, I tried to shelter my kids from it, and I don't have enough minutes assigned for this talk to speak to why I wanted to do that, but basically, growing up in Panama in the 80s, there was so much political insecurity locally and so much going on globally that I can remember the day my mom said, "No more news." And to be honest, I enjoyed it. We enjoyed newsless evenings where instead of watching the TV, we talked to each other, and I should try to ask her how to achieve that, because it doesn't seem to work with my kids. So I tried to keep my kids selectively informed. Well, that didn't work. The day we all heard about George Floyd, my 10-year-old daughter came home and said, "Mama, what happened? What was this about?" And this was the time when they weren't even in school in person. So now that she knew, all she could say was, "Mama, I just don't get it. Why would anybody want to hurt someone else just because of the color of their skin?" And my answer was because they're scared, because people are scared of what they don't know. And in particularly, that's a very difficult thing here in Oregon, because there are so few of us. It makes it really hard. So now that I've shared how we as Black people can't escape, right? We can't step out of our skin. We can't not be who we are. That the traumas imposed by history have deep roots, and that they show up at unexpected times, and that my kids will find things out, even if I try to avoid telling them about it, because they are way more tech savvy than I am. I want to share something that's a little bit closer to my heart, and particularly in the context of the song we just heard, "I Just Want to Live." I was inspired to share important moments for me in the past year that relate to wanting to live, and in my case, more importantly, wanting my son to live. If the realization that Black men killed, targeted, or threatened by excessive police force in this country could have been my dad or other close family member was upsetting, the idea that my son would grow up from cute to a threat, and this is to quote a 2020 article that came out around this time last year, that is too much to handle. My son is 8. And he's constantly praised by his curly hair, by how cute he is, and all I want is for that to last forever. So before I get too teary-eyed, I want to share a little bit more about myself. I already mentioned I grew up in Panama to a white English mother and a Black Afro-Caribbean dad. I grew up hearing comments like, "Are you adopted? Who's your mom? Where's your mom?" All the comments you get when people can't make sense of genetics, can't make sense of this mix. I then married a white man from England, there's a pattern, and we moved to Corvallis in 2015. As a Panamanian, Afro-Latina, I did my undergraduate degree in Virginia, and then a very nonlinear path took me to Miami and eventually brought me to the West Coast. My white mother was unable to protect me from everything I lived as a Black woman in the United States. And my dad would just tell me, "Annie, just show up." And so I did. And I kept showing up until I got my PhD, until I got a tenure-track job at OSU, until I just heard I got tenure last week. And I will keep showing up. This to say, I've overcome some of those comments, right? I've toughened up. But none of this means a thing when I think about my son. When I saw that Dante Wright's mom was white, it all came rushing back to me, that unexpected fear. My white mom couldn't protect me from racist comments. My white husband won't be able to protect our son from being perceived as a threat someday. And that is terrifying. So what does this mean moving forward? It means that we as a society continue to speak up against injustice. It means that we acknowledge and respect Black pain and trauma and give space when folks need it most. It means that we continue to chip away at the system. It means that we listen to each other. It means that we develop empathy. And through empathetic listening, we get a glimpse, maybe a little glimpse, of what it's like to be Black in the US. It even means we expand our thinking into what it means to be Black outside of the US. It's very different. It means that we persist. It means that we take a breath. It means that we slow down. It means that we found our tribe. And gosh, I'm so grateful that I finally made the effort and found the group here at Corvallis. We stay hydrated, we stay focused, because the work goes on. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Spalding, for those words. I'm sure a number of us had that same vision of Dante Wright and his mother, the same way Dr. Alexander expressed those same words previously in the message that she provided to the campus. And it was the same feelings that I had, you know, seeing my mother or my father being in a situation of such, or even my brothers. So those words were extremely, extremely felt. So thank you. Now I have the pleasure of introducing our next and final speaker for today, Dr. Damani Wright. So Dr. Wright was born and raised in Albion, Michigan. Damani finished up his bachelor's and master's degree in health education from the College of Health Sciences at Idaho State University, which is also where he began his professional career in the Office of Enrollment Planning as the then titled Ethnic Student Advisor, Recruiter, Admissions Counselor, and National Student Exchange Coordinator. This position allowed him access to enter the professoriate by first co-teaching and later creating and teaching undergraduate courses. He would later teach a myriad of classes ranging from nutrition, research, diversity and equity, to sociology for the University of Phoenix for 6 years, during which he was able to secure a position at Boise State University. He started as the leadership minor coordinator, teaching leadership classes and developing leadership programming, then later became the assistant director of the Student Involvement and Leadership Center and interim manager for the Student Media Office. Dr. Wright finished up his doctoral studies in educational leadership with an emphasis in higher education administration from the College of Education at Idaho State University, shortly after which he secured an incredible opportunity as Director of Student Leadership and Involvement here at Oregon State University. He later became the Executive Director of Student Experiences and Engagement at OSU, which includes the Craft Center, Community Engagement and Leadership, and Experiential Learning and Activities. In 2018, he began supporting diversity and cultural engagement, now a part of Student Experiences and Engagement. And in 2020, he became the Associate Vice Provost for Student Affairs with a portfolio that includes engagement and inclusion. Please welcome Dr. Damani Wright.
Thank you. And I'm with Chris. That does feel really official, huh? I get it now. I appreciate this space and this time. Understand that my sharing in this space is definitely different than my sharing in a space with the Black community. And so what I'm going to give you are some things that have just really been sort of on my mind during this time. I'll try not to hold you too long. My Pentecostal background might scare a few people. Like, you might feel like we've heard that before, but I promise you, I have it written down to make sure that I won't do that, but I will try not to go off script because I put some time into this as well. Because things can go a number of ways when so much emotion is flowing. And the previous speakers did such a great job. Y'all just filled my cup. I appreciate all of y'all, so thank you. I hope that what I say resonates with at least one person out there, as I'm still battling a ton of emotion with so many senseless and violent killings that are now made so public. I decided not to talk about legislation, national police trainings, nor policing in general. I decided just to talk to you about the feelings I'm experiencing as it relates to these murders of Black folks at the hands of police. Here's another bottom line. We need you all. In order to make a positive and lasting change, we are going to need you to take action. I think about how vulnerable this feeling is for me and for so many others who look like me to be experiencing these murders nationally and so frequently, and to then process through them in such a public way. I think about what vulnerability itself means, which is susceptible to physical or emotional attack or harm, right? In its etymology, like its Latin roots, it means to wound, hurt, injure, or maim. I think about the emotional wounds inflicted on us as we see report after report of these senseless acts of violence enacted upon black folks, in most cases with impunity to law enforcement. If we continuously feel vulnerable in this sense, how does this manifest when we continue to engage with folks from day to day? What happens when we cannot hide all of the wounds that we have anymore? What happens when people try to hide them and put on the mask of everything's all right while trying to ignore or hide these wounds? What happens when those around us do not attend to these wounds that are being inflicted on us? What happens when we black folks try and speak with confidence and assertiveness while not attending to our wounds, or better yet, trying to hide them and pretend as though they are not there? How does that feel to us? I know for myself, I feel unsure of myself at times. I feel as though I don't belong at times, like an imposter in my own skin. I can feel isolated and unsupported. And these are just a few of the feelings that I feel like you need to be aware of. Despite our vulnerabilities, there's a narrative being spun that we are actually invulnerable, which means impossible to harm or damage, synonymous with things like immune or indestructible or impenetrable, impervious, likened to a god or superhero. And when you add to it, as Dorian discussed, someone at his size, how that narrative is spun out of control. These images that people project of us are dangerous to us and how people treat us as well. It is a way of dehumanizing us in a way that makes people believe that we can withstand more than we can withstand physically, mentally, and emotionally. Instead of mourning victims of police brutality and violence, we are often stuck arguing, why did someone run? If you can say you can't breathe, then technically you can breathe, and etc. Continued bullshit. It is ridiculous, it is callous, it is unempathetic, and completely misses the point. It never ceases to amaze me that when black folks ask for justice, it becomes a question about who else is not receiving justice. If you want to protest for me with chants of no justice, no peace, then you must first know justice and know peace. What does justice look like? What does it mean? How is it manifested? What are you doing every day to achieve it? I believe that black folks are strong because we have to be in order to function in this society. We are resilient because we have to be, or else we cease to exist or even progress. We provide grace because we need you. It means as angry as I am, and as hurt as I am, and as disappointed as I am, that in order to make a positive, sustainable change, we will need you to take action. I don't want my grace squandered and people believing that it was a pass of some sort. It was a conscious effort to forego my pain, to try to take care of you in these moments in hopes that you will accept the challenge of being anti-racist and take action. This means that if you are with us, that Black Lives Matter cannot simply be your de jour filter or hashtag. This means that when wearing a Black Lives Matter shirt, hat, or what have you, how about you nod at a brother versus pretend like you don't see me? You know, when I lived in Idaho, another very white state, I remember I lived on an old highway road, and I was taking the garbage out one day. And as I was doing so, this older white woman came riding by on her bike, and this was a bike like that looked like it was out of like the Wizard of Oz or something. And I was taking out the garbage, and I turned and looked, and she was riding by, and she said, "Right on, soul brother." And all I did was just say, "Right on." Because at least she acknowledged me. But I see people with Black Lives Matter hats and shirts who I walk around and they don't even look at me. They don't nod. They don't give me any sort of acknowledgement that I exist. And I wonder, like, that feels like a contrast that I'm not sure I know how to reconcile just yet. Last year, I was overwhelmed with so many stores and restaurants and other businesses putting up statements on websites and sending statements out. It was beautiful. But where are you at now? Did sales stabilize? Did people decide not to cancel you so you're good now? Did you meet the moment? Was that the most you could do? Where are you? We are still in the moment, and we need you. This researcher and author by the name of Brené Brown, who I really like, says that vulnerability is a true measure of courage. She also says that when we lose the capacity for vulnerability, that joy becomes foreboding, right? Foreboding means fearful, apprehension, a feeling that something bad will happen. This is part of why, despite the overwhelming evidence of the Chauvin trial, many of us still remain fearful. We were foreboding joy, and I think that constriction and that holding back of not really wanting to be vulnerable for fear that, you know what, this could happen again to us. We've seen this play out, and look at everything that it took to get this result. So I'm sorry that I don't place my hope in the verdict of a trial that everybody who was watching it should have known what the result should have been. But again, thinking about all the things that led to that and where we are now are the things that they both hurt me in ways, and also they're things that I think about that give me hope, because I think about the people, the bystanders, right, who stood up and actually started questioning the police, who called the police on the police, right, the people who took video, right, those law enforcement officers who spoke out, the people who marched for a year, right, those people who made the decision, right, in the jury. So that's why I place my hope in people who actually took action. And so for me, I think, we could not make ourselves vulnerable for yet another disappointment, which again leads to more wounds. We're in a cycle. And my question is, how do we break it? So we have to have some intent. We have to have some healing. We have to have some action. We have to have continued resilience, and we have to do it together. So we've got to get to work because we have a lot of work to do, and I'm counting on the people who have, last May, who were again putting out these statements, who were so concerned with how we were doing as a nation and things that were unjust. I need you to sort of bring it back up again, because it's not over. Okay? Thank you. I appreciate y'all.
Thank you so much, Damani. I absolutely appreciate your words, and I agree with you that we need the folks who brought this up in the beginning to continue to be with us. And so I want to thank you for sharing. I want to thank Charlene and Anna, Dorian, and Chris for all sharing your thoughts. You didn't have to, but you did. And I hope, I know those words resonated with me, and I hope those words resonated with you. I hope the music resonated with you. I want to thank those who are here joining us and those on the live stream for joining us. I want to thank the Memorial Union staff, including Sean Rathbun, Deb Mott, Mike Matthews. I'd like to thank our offices that helped us with this, the Office of Institutional Diversity, Division of Student Affairs, and the Alumni Association. As I said in the beginning, this is one of a few events that we're doing around this Rest in Power. The next will be a virtual event, which will be a webinar called Organizing Black Liberation, and that will be on the 20th at 5:30, and more information will come out about that. We're also doing some podcasts, the Got Work to Do podcast, that will also be out. I can't say anything else because everything has been said. And so I just want to appreciate you all for coming, and have a great evening. Thanks.